Next up, we would like to talk about enabling mobility through mmWave technologies. And the speaker will be Gabriel Lim, Industry Development Manager of A-STAR's Institute of Microelectronics, IME. Ladies and gentlemen, shall we put our hands together for Gabriel Lim?
Hi, very good afternoon to one and all. So my name is Gabriel. I'm the Industry Development Manager for A-STAR. So I'm from the Institute of Microelectronics. And first thing walking into this room, I see quite a few familiar faces around. I've been in the industry for a couple of years already. Previously, my previous role was back in EDB, in the electronics sector. And before that, I was with GlobalFoundries as a process engineer. So this is a platform which I really enjoy talking about semiconductor technologies. And I think today's topic is going to be very close to all our hearts because the theme is mobility. It is something that is very close to my heart as well because when you talk about mobility, you talk about self-driving cars, you talk about autonomous vehicles as some of the previous speakers has pointed out. So these are some of the things that we think over the next 10, 20, 30 years will be driving the future of the roads. And not just the roads, but even other areas like in the ports or even in the airports where you have AGVs, right? So this is a topic that I think it's very important that we all should address. And over the course of my speech today, I'd like to give an overview of what the government and A-STAR in particular is doing in terms of AV technologies, and at the same time how some of A-STAR's latest developments could possibly be a good fit for some of you out there who are looking for collaborations. Right, so to start off this presentation, I'd like to just ask, or just maybe let you think about self-driving cars, because self-driving cars are something that, are they going to be a reality or are they going to be fiction? I think previous speaker from Xilinx has spoken quite a bit about this. But think about it, is it something that, is it just essentially regulated by technology itself? Of course, we all want AV technologies to be very robust, right? Be able to see things clearly. We want AV technologies to be able to ensure that you detect the right objects so that you don't accelerate or decelerate wrongly. But I think further to that, importantly is also the government framework, right? The regulations have to be put in place in order for us to ensure that AVs have a future, not just in Singapore, but in the world, right? And I was quite worried because just now when I was coming over here, I was definitely, the organizer told me to come earlier by about 1 hour, but when I tried to park my car at Marina Bay Sands, the car park was full. So I was very worried I would be late for this presentation. It was at that point of time I thought that, an autonomous vehicle, if I could just get off the car and command my car to park somewhere nearby, I could just run up here. And that's really an instance where you think that AV could actually be a bit more nearer term, if you don't care about the security and aspects and things like that. So I think that's something that is very personal to all our hearts. And let's also think about how AVs, beyond the personal cars, right, and into other sectors, into the other industries, meaning like your automation industries, your robotics, how they can be used pervasively. So I think previous speakers has also spoken quite a bit about the levels of automation. So I won't delve too much into this point, but essentially what I want to highlight is that there are a lot of research work going on right now, right in the A-STAR research institutes, as well as around the world, and of course some of the private companies. And if we define the different levels of autonomous driving, of course we do see that mainly right now we are focusing on the levels 2 to 5, right? 2 being the technologies that allow you to do some of your steering and acceleration functions, as well as also some of the environmental detection capabilities, right? So this can be through vision analytics, through using some of your radar sensors to guide you to the right lanes. But increasingly, we have to be able to move beyond that if we want the autonomous vehicle technologies to be very robust. We have to make sure we do a lot of test bedding, and the hours clocked have to be high enough to ensure that these cars are safe on the roads. So on average, there's one accident every 250,000 miles. That is for a normal car, right? If, let's say, you and me are drivers, average one accident every 250,000 miles. So that's about 13 years for one accident. It's not too bad. But in terms of AVs, the number goes down, right? It's one accident every half of that 250,000, so it's about 100,000 miles. So it's not safe enough yet. Of course, how we can get there is through test bedding, right? And through test bedding, we can actually essentially move up these levels of robustness, up the levels from 2, 3, 4, and eventually to level 5. So I just want to share a little bit about Singapore's role in autonomous driving. So the Singapore government is actually very proactive in wanting to promote Singapore as an autonomous vehicle hub. And I say this from my previous background with EDB. I've seen a lot of work going on with the transportation cluster and lots of discussions going on with LTA to want to make Singapore a very competitive place to do your test bedding as well as develop your more upstream kind of component development work, right? So as you can see in the latest index, Singapore has actually been selected as the top 2 country in the world for autonomous driving readiness. So Singapore is just behind the Netherlands. And why I say this is because if you look at the terms of the regulations, the Singapore government has actually tried to made amendments to the Road Traffic Act. So back in 2017, they actually recognized that the roads in Singapore can actually be driven by autopilots. So that means that there's no human needed behind a car, right? So that's actually passed into law now. So it's actually paving the way. Of course, it's small little steps, but the government intends to make it more accessible for more and more people to do test bedding in Singapore, right? And very proudly to say that, you see that's our Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong, and he has sat in A-Star's autonomous driving car back then. So that's a proof that he himself is also ready to get on board the technology push. Okay, so a little bit about the ecosystem. I think there have been quite a bit of technical discussions, but just to give you a broad level overview of what's available out there in Singapore, I would say that right now we have quite a well-rounded ecosystem. So all the way from the universities, the research institutes, to the industry ecosystem and the test bedding, there's a lot of activity going on. In our 2 top universities, NUS and NTU, there are already centers of excellence for developing and test bedding autonomous vehicle technologies. So NUS, of course, they have a MIT alliance, that's a NUS Smart MIT collaboration. In NTU, we've got the Center of Excellence for Testing and Research of AVs. I think I kind of played a part in that role because back when I was in my EDB days, I gave a grant to this as well. So it's, of course, this is close to my heart. Research institutes, of course, A-Star being the Institute of Foucault and Research, I2R. As you have seen in the picture previous slide, they developed a car. So that is our sister institute. This autonomous car can actually be deployed on the roads around One North, and also incorporating some of the technologies that Institute of Microelectronics is going to develop in the future. Right, so that's for the RIs. In the industry ecosystem, right, this is where I want to get your attention most because you guys out there, I'm sure most of you are from industry, we hope you do play a big part in this. Those of you from the MNCs, I've listed, I hope I haven't missed out any of my good friends there, so the big boys are all here. I mean, I've listed this list because this is basically the key companies in the world who are doing autonomous vehicle modules, chip-level development. We do hope that, of course, you guys also come into it more actively as well. I'm sure some of you are already involved in the deployment of these AVs in Singapore. And interestingly, we do see a lot of government, large local enterprise, LOEs like ST Engineering. They are essentially a system integrator, but more and more so, we see them playing a part in a lot of the more upstream development work. So what we're trying to do is to push also not just the MNCs, but the LLEs and the SMEs to want to take up this kind of technology so we get a holistic all-round system. Because anyway, these LLEs, they own a lot of the land and a lot of the areas, right? And the public agencies is also very important because agencies like your Port of Singapore Authority, Land Transport Authority, Changi Airport Group, right? I mean, these are private companies now, but of course they are very closely connected to the government. And we do see them also wanting to provide locations to enable this kind of test bedding. So these are going to play a very key role in ensuring the holistic ecosystem in Singapore to develop AV technologies. Okay, so I just want to also highlight that when we talk about AVs, I'm not just referring to your autonomous passenger vehicles, but we're moving into areas like your ports of Singapore Authority, where right now there's also a move to want to automate your logistics. When you off-board the containers from your ships, how do you then have AGVs or autonomous vehicles driving on the port to do these deliveries, to reduce the reliance on manpower? And we see that across not just the port, but also Changi Airport Group, right, where they're actually using some of these AGVs to deliver food and baggages around the airport. And last but not least, of course, we've got ST Kinetics. They just had a contract won to provide buses to Sentosa Development Corporation, so that you can probably take some of these buses in comfort in pretty soon. In fact, it's already been deployed. So it's really an all-rounded approach by Singapore government to want to roll out this kind of technologies, and we do see it now infiltrating into the various public agencies and government sectors. Okay, so with so much talk about the ecosystem around Singapore, let's now also take a look at how this is impacting the global demand for radar modules. Because why we look at radar modules is because this is one of the enablers for autonomous vehicles. And the fact that there's a lot of demand for both the passenger and also in the AGVs, whether it's for robotics, means that when you look at holistically, there's a great push. In fact, the growth is going to be pretty exponential. 77 gigahertz, which is the frequency used very frequently for the radar module market, is going to grow to 4 billion by 2022. And this is just looking at the module market itself, but if you look at the entire AV market, including the car OEMs and everything, it's going to be a $1 trillion market by 2025, so that's really huge. And this is also probably why everybody is paying a lot of attention to this area. This, just to give credit, this is from Yole Development. And yeah, I mean, I guess previous speaker has also shared quite a bit, but just quickly go through some of the key areas that are being, some of the key components of automotive technologies would be your LiDAR, your radar modules, your cameras, as well as your cameras. Basically, it's three. Of course, the radars are a very important part of focus for Institute of Microelectronics because these are some of the areas that will be a bit more pertinent to what IME is doing. And radars are also very important because in your cars, you probably have like 10 of them moving forward, you know, with the side the radars at the corner, the radars in front. And of course, there's been a continual push to want to move the prices down, make it more affordable, make it smaller, make it more compact. And this is the reason why IME is trying to push the envelopes in this area to make it more accessible to the market. So just to go a little bit more about some of the pros and cons of the different types of AV technologies. So we've talked about radars, we've talked about camera sensors, we talked about LiDARs, and over at IME, we were taking this radar approach because we feel that a combination approach between radar and a camera fusion, sensor fusion is important because there are some capabilities that camera can't fulfill which radar can, right? So I guess radar is extremely robust, good in providing accuracy when there's bad weather. So where there's fog, where there's rain, heavy rain, and when there's haze in Singapore, you know, so sometimes you can get really bad accuracy on just camera. But radar kind of like is agnostic to these kind of things, right? And especially if you are in other countries where there's a lot of natural disasters and when there's dirt roads. So these are things that radar can see through. Right? But radar cannot see the lane markings and traffic signs, right? That's one of the drawbacks which is compensated by camera technologies. But I guess one of my counter arguments also to that is when camera technologies can work when there are lane markings on the road, but you have seen some roads where there are no lane markings, and that's when the cars can entirely steer off course. So that's another problem that the camera AI experts have to work out as well. And standalone cameras are a good choice because they do provide high resolution images, right? They have very good angular resolution, so that means that it's very wide. You can basically tune the view of the car, the whole view of the car, entirely 180 degrees. And as well, machine vision learning is pretty mature. So in our sister institute, I2R, they are doing quite a bit of work. In fact, there's a program office working on just vision analytics for the autonomous vehicle industry. So we try to leverage on that to bring the best to our collaborators. And as you can see, some of the incidents that involve car crashes, like the Tesla autopilot using Mobileye, has already been is a result of poor camera vision as well as analytics issues, right? So that actually caused 2 fatal crashes. So of course, we do not want to see a repeat of that happening, and that is also why we want to take a look now. These are the list of the various technologies in a nutshell of what can be used in an autonomous vehicle. So our approach in A-Star and IME and I2R is to use the combination of both camera as well as radar, because as you can see in the green color column is where you have the positive outcomes, and it kind of like matches, just complements each other. What radar doesn't have, camera has, and what camera has, and vice versa, just to say it simply. So of course, very importantly, you want to have a few things, right? Good field of view, so that you don't miss out anything on the cars. Acceptable range, right? Up to at least 250 meters to ensure that, or maybe even more, so that you have enough time to react to cars in front of you. Good angular resolution, so that at the side and corners of cars, you don't miss out any missing information, which was one of the reasons for the car crashes and the Google Uber car accidents. And as well being robust in every weather condition. And last but not least, of course, cost is a big factor, right? This is probably one of the key competitors. I wouldn't say competitors, but it's one of the key push, right? Why we want to use radar ahead of LiDAR. Of course, I think we do believe that it should be a combination of everything. But if radar and camera can push the envelopes, then why not bring down the cost by using this? Okay. So this is essentially a summary of our approach from IME and I2R. So we do want to build a module that combines both the camera, radar onto one platform, as you can see there in that particular block. So we want to do that together with our machine learning experts from I2R. So whatever data information we collect, this will go to the machine learning experts who will help to then refine how this whole module learns and sees things. And of course, very, very importantly, this is going to be on RF CMOS, right? Because very important, I think the industry will move towards RF CMOS for the need of better integration so that we can scale down the chip size. If you look at the current radar modules, it's probably like this size if you just put your 2 hands together, right? Some of the mid to short range radars at your side of your car is about this size. If you think about how we can scale down using RF CMOS, probably we go to half of that size, right? So that's something that IME will try to achieve with our development. Why we are doing it, although we know that some of the leaders are already doing it, like Texas Instruments, they're already moving that direction, but we do think that a Singapore made in Singapore radar and camera fusion module is important to enable our partners, our good partners here, to have a chance also to collaborate and bring these technologies to commercialization, right? So this is an overall summary of what's going to be in our chip module solution. The chip is currently now being designed and taped out. It will be ready in April 2020, and that is when it will be ready for you guys to, any collaborators interested out there, to come and partner with us to try out this technology, right? Of course, we are looking at from all different parts of the ecosystem, not just the system integrators, not just the OEMs, but also even for the tier 2 companies. If you want to, if there's some particular area you want to refine in your chip development, we can do it with us, or if we have some ideas, better ideas, for sure, of course, we want to learn from you as well. So we are looking at these particular advantages. So process advantage, CMOS technology, of course, for better scaling and integration. Lower cost, right? Of course, when you do a monolithic solution, of course, it's definitely going to be cheaper. We do want a complete radar solution and a small solution area on the system on chip, so that's the advantage of our architecture. The next thing, of course, would be the antenna and packaging, and this is one of the key points, antenna and package, right? So what we're going to do is we're trying to move the antenna off the PCB, so that takes off your real estate off the PCB and into the chip itself. So we have got quite a lot of interest in this. In fact, we already have a collaboration with one of the large tier ones who has provided us some of their chips to want to integrate into our antenna and package. So we're going to move these antennas into our chip using the RDL layers as well as a two-mode strategy. So this is one of the key selling points as well for Institute of Microelectronics. And of course, how this also improves the performance is, of course, your beam forming. So there will be a lot of side lobe formations on your PCBs, but once you put it onto the package itself, this kind of eliminates a lot of the interference. So this will actually help you in your side radars, your corner radars, and to better define what's on the road, right? So this approach, we think, will be pretty usable and pretty useful for what the industry is moving towards. Okay, so this is just a YOLE a report which we have taken off. It also shows what IME is doing in terms of packaging and compares with some of our competitors. So the one right on the extreme right is what IME is doing, our approach. So we are using a more and more approach. So this is actually a mold first integration process using double molding. So of course, how we can tune some of these process parameters is, of course, through some of the RDL layers, we can increase or improve the dielectric materials and properties, and this can actually help to improve the antenna performance as well. And I'm also happy to share that we do have a dedicated 12-inch fan-out wafer level packaging line in Institute of Microelectronics, and that line can be used to develop this technology with your specifications and your areas of interest. So we do bespoke solutions for whoever our collaborators. So this can be a pretty good angle of collaboration for those who are interested out there. And these are the current parameters that we are trying to go at versus what's in the market with our competitors. I've blanked out the names of the companies, but I think if you look at the technology, some of you probably guess who they are. So what we're trying to do is we are going on the 40 nanometer CMOS, and we're going to try to use one die only. We're using AIP, antenna and package, that is. And number of TX-RX would be 3, TX-4RX. Then this will be catered for the 76 to 81 gigahertz frequency. Range, I won't go through everything, but the range will probably be up to as good as some of our competitors. And we're going to reduce the chip and module size to about half of what's on the average in the market out there. And of course, the most interesting part is if we can try to bring the cost down a lot more drastically to what is probably going to be more acceptable in the market. Okay, so just to summarize, in total, I think it's really interesting that this particular summit is talking about mobility. I think it's an area that Singapore government and A-STAR as a whole will want to embrace, and I hope that everybody here is also looking that direction. We do think that so AV technologies will definitely be increasingly adopted over the next 10 to 20 years. And I think it's only a matter of time before these technologies get more robust enough for adoption. The second point also is in order to adopt these technologies, we need to have a regulatory approvals and for international standards in order for these to become mainstream. And Singapore is already actually one of the ideal locations to do that because the government is already pushing and setting aside regulations for such enablement of such technologies. Right, and in millimeter wave technology is one of the key enablers, which is what A*STAR, Institute of Microelectronics and Institute of Infocom Research are doing. We want to do a combination, and our belief, a combination of millimeter wave radar plus camera fusion is the way to go, considering the trade-offs of both technologies. And last but not least, we are leveraging, IME in particular is leveraging our RF CMOS platform to ensure better integration, and as well as our antenna and package capabilities, right, using our 12-inch fan-out wafer level packaging line to deliver something which is smaller form factor, lower cost, and of course, hopefully it will be much better performance and cheaper. So with that, thank you very much, and thank you to SSIA and the organizers for giving me the time to speak here. I guess it's going to be quite tight for questions and answers, but feel free to look for me. And I just want to take a quick picture. My contact details are there. If you have any further questions, you can always drop me an email or call me at my office. With that, thank you very much for your kind attention.